Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter, talking with my friend Peter Laffin, senior editor for the Washington Examiner, about, well, the ceasefire in Iran. Peter, I'm so glad to speak with you again, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing great, Marcus, and I'm glad to speak with you. I want to say happy Easter to you and your audience. It's a crazy time in the world, but the Lord is risen, and He's with us, and we have every reason to celebrate, regardless of what's happening in the world and in the news.
Would that you and I could just spend the next segment talking about Easter?
Amen.
So, speaking of Easter, and yes, blessed Easter to you and your family and your audience, your readership. Speaking of Easter, we were greeted with particular Truth Social texts that, for want of a better expression, sent most of the citizens of the U.S. into some level of concern. Lord have mercy was one of my sentiments when I saw that, especially on Easter Sunday. I think that's a good enough place to begin to provide us some context about what was happening globally.
Yeah, amen to that. That was a terrible message to wake up to from Trump. It was full of profanities and threats, and it couldn't have been more the antithesis of the Easter message. Mm-hmm. I can't even read it out loud to you right now. And then there was yesterday's. It's an amazing thing. Let's think where we are today. It's Wednesday. Mm-hmm. Yesterday morning, we woke up to a message from Trump talking about possibly wanting to wipe out an entire civilization. Mm-hmm. And then we had that incredible breakthrough, and there was a ceasefire last night, and now it appears that ceasefire might be falling apart. Things are developing at such a breakneck speed. It's really important for us to zoom out and get out of the moment and attempt to see everything unfolding in context. I think it's an important place to start is to remember that we are in a new age of information. And it's possible things seem worse than they are in the moment to moment, though, there's good reason to be upset and scared right now. It's a relatively new development that we can see war unfold in real time, and that we can witness the negotiations and some of the very ugly negotiations that have always happened in war, that we can witness them unfolding in front of us. There's this expectation, too, in our world that once things happen, we know everything about it. And, when Trump went to war with Iran in February, one of the big criticisms was, well, we don't know what the plan is. What's the plan? Tell us everything. And we have to remember, it's a relatively modern invention that we get any information at all. Regular people get any information at all about wars as they unfold. But we get it now instantaneously with a tweet. And that can be very disconcerting to watch. And none of that excuses the fact that, our president made a statement yesterday about wiping out Iran civilization that is unlike any statement we've ever seen uttered by any U.S. leader in history, especially somebody who has, his finger on the nuclear button and the capability to really wipe people out. And it's okay to be disconcerted about that. And that, that was an incredibly disappointing moment. But yeah, I'll just start with that, Marcus. I certainly share the concern I think that many people, many Catholics have today, that the man in charge of things is not up to the moral standard that somebody with this sort of power probably should be. And that's very troubling.
I agree wholeheartedly. And there's so much that I'd love to have you speak on pertaining to the tendency of the populace to immediate outrage, always swinging to one side or the other. But one of the more pressing questions that arises from what you just shared is he's been doing things like this in terms of outrageous language, hyperbolic language, frankly, incendiary language for a long time now. In some sense, I ought to say we shouldn't be surprised, but I have to admit, when that tweet came through, or that text came through about wiping out a civilization, even I was perturbed. I knew logically doing that would mean war crimes and crimes against humanity. I knew that. But even then, it perturbed me.
Yeah. Now, it should be said that today, and Iran says this almost every day, death to America and death to Israel is in their charter. This is something that their leaders chant during official government proceedings.
Yeah.
And today they issued a threat saying, we're not going to be careful with the targets we choose in the next few days. And so this is normal for the mullahs who are on the other side of this. Now, of course, we shouldn't lower ourselves to the standard of psychopathic death cult that runs Iran. But it's worth, not in the president's defense for making that statement, but I think it's worth keeping in mind who the adversary is. Not that it justifies it, but it helps explain maybe why he feels the need to get so graphic and so ugly and be so menacing, because in truth, the adversary is menacing and evil, a profoundly evil regime that we have been facing off against for the last month, and Israel faces off against every day. So that I don't mean to soften the concern. I'm very concerned when I see a president write a thing like that, because even the threat out loud, that's a moral degradation that I don't know if we're going to be able to get back.
Right.
I don't know if we're going to be able to heal from. And there is real that I can imagine people in the audience. I don't know about this audience, but in the audience generally, hearing that and saying, "Oh, suck it up, Nancy boy. Like, this is war. Bad things happen." But no, I have to push back there. That's a real moral degradation and a real problem. And goodness, I hope that the negotiations this weekend that are apparently going to be led by J.D. Vance and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, I hope they're fruitful, and I hope this ceasefire lasts.
What do we say in response to those who have said, well, he uses mean tweets or whatnot, but he gets results? There's a proper response to this based on the context you just shared.
Sure. Well, let's compare his results. Before we say, he gets results, let's compare his results to previous administrations. I think it is correct to say that it's been the policy of the United States government, no matter which party is in power, since the late 70s and early 80s, that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. And we can't allow them to get a nuclear weapon because we know what they're capable of. We know that they just killed tens of thousands of their own people for protesting in the street. That just happened. I think it's the mission of saying, the policy of saying we cannot allow them to get a nuclear weapon is a good policy. It's a just policy. I think it's the right one. Whether or not Trump's actions in the last 39 days have made the prospect of Iran getting a nuclear weapon further away or closer, that's yet to be determined. There are some good signs today that in early negotiations that there was some willingness on the part of the Iranians to hand over what they have of their nuclear material, or at least allow us to go in and get it. And if that's the truth, if that ends up happening, I have to think, okay, that's a great, great, great result. Especially if you compare that to the Obama administration's really terrible deal, toothless deal in 2015, where we gave them billions of dollars in exchange for, some promises about not going forward with their nuclear program. People say, well, that was doing the job. Why don't we just let that work? That was not working. And we know that wasn't working because Iran continued to be incredibly aggressive in the region. It didn't curb their behavior at all. They still planned and executed the October 7th terrorist attacks in Israel. They still were funding their terror proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas. It's nothing about the Obama nuclear deal curtailed the behavior that needed to be curtailed for us to feel comfortable, especially not with them having a nuclear weapon. The Biden administration continued on with that policy. They unfroze $6 billion in assets days of Iranian assets days before the October 7th attacks. They didn't get the results we were after. Did Trump get the results we were after? That remains to be seen. Everybody right now on either side of this, the Democratic side or the Republican side, in the media, everybody who said in the beginning of this war, Trump's a genius, Trump is great, today is saying Trump is genius and Trump is great. Everybody who says Trump is an idiot, Trump is evil, is saying that today. And they will say that tomorrow, no matter what the deal says. So all this is to say, I don't know if Trump got the results. I hope he did, because I agree with every president of the last 25 years, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. So I hope he gets the results. All that said, threatening genocide, we Catholics, we don't do evil things in order to get good outcomes. That is a clear moral boundary that was crossed. And we're all rightly aghast at that. And we're going to have to work that out in our politics. I think between now and the midterm, we're going to see this. I don't think this is one of those things that's just going to fade away into the black hole of the internet. I think we're going to be talking about this tweet for a while now.
I wanted to ask questions about the Strait of Hormuz and the propensity for outrage, but Peter, my friend, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Marcus. God bless you.
God bless you. My guest has been Peter Laffin, senior editor for the Washington Examiner. He and I have been talking about, well, essentially the conflict in Iran. Are we seeing a real ceasefire? Will it last? And how to properly think about some aspects of it. Stay tuned for the next hour. I'm Marcus Peter.